Hey, how's it going? And today I'm excited to bring you this tutorial on creating a Niagara effect, a Niagara system. And we just call this one Sky Traffic Visuals. And this is kind of what it looks like if I hit play. And this is just one system here going through the sky. And you can create as many of these as you want. And there's parameters on them that you can add a lot of variation to the effect. So this is just a super cool effect to put in your background in your scene, and this not only works in Unreal Engine, this also works in Unreal Editor for Fortnite. So I'll be back in just a minute and we'll go through this. Okay, so I'm back and we're ready to get started. I'm just in a third person template right now, and I'm just on the content folder level. And to start, I'm just going to right click, and we're going to go to FX, and we're going to go to Niagara System, and we're going to start with a new system from selected emitters and go next. And the one that we're looking for here is called an upward mesh burst, and so it'll come in with a lot of default settings, and all we have to do is get rid of some and adjust other ones, but everything we need is already pretty much included in here. So I'll just select that, hit the plus sign, and we'll go finish. And I'm just going to call this NS for Niagara System, and then I'll just call it Sky Traffic. And that's that. And then we'll go ahead and double click into it, and we'll go ahead and dock this up on top. And it's running by default, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn that off. Just go over a couple points about this. You'll see here that we have a particle spawn and an update, and really the difference between a spawn and an update is spawn is you can consider that like event begin play, and an update you can consider that like happening every frame. So this happens initially one time, and this happens continually. So that's the big difference between them. So I actually have to look at a couple notes here because there's so many settings in here, and obviously I don't have them all memorized. So there's certain settings on here that we don't need. So here we do need the emitter state, we do need the spawn burst instantaneous, we do need initialize particle, add velocity, initial mesh, and we need another one called shape location. So I'm just going to go ahead and add that right now. I'm just click that plus sign, and I'll search for shape location and get that in there. And then down here on particle update, which again occurs every frame, we have the particle state, we want that. Gravity force, we actually don't need this, so I'm just going to delete that. Update mesh orientation, we want that. Scale color, we want that. We don't need drag, so we're going to go ahead and delete that. Solve forces, we want that. Scale mesh size, we don't need this either, so we're going to delete that. And that's essentially everything that we need. There's one more thing we need here. I'm going to add here, and this one's called curl noise force. And that's all the modules that we need for this. Now this is a stack system, and it basically goes from the top down to the bottom. And the interesting thing about Niagara, if you think about it, it really is just a constellation of settings. There's no drawing, there's no, I don't want to say there's nothing artistic involved, but a lot of it is just settings. It's nothing but settings and modules. If you know the settings, you just have to come in and put it on all the correct settings, and then you've got all these really great effects. Of course, there's a ton of settings in here, and so it takes a lot of practice and study to get to figure out what does what exactly. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is over here we have something called user parameters, and this is very similar to when you're working with the material editor and you create a parameter, which means that you can adjust that in the editor. So there's some settings on here that we'd like to configure in the editor. So what's going to happen is we're going to create this system, and once it's created we can just drag it into the scene, and then we can drag as many systems as we want into the background, so we can have all different kinds of them all over the place, and then we can go in and tweak these parameters so that they don't all look exactly the same. So that's really cool. So let's go ahead and add the parameters that we need to add right now. And there's just 4 of them that we're going to add. First user parameter is actually going to be called mesh scale. So what I'm going to do here is click here to add it. We're going to go make new, common, and this is a vector. So here we're going to go to vector right there, and we're just going to call this mesh scale. No space in between, mesh scale. And here it's 0, 0. We're going to put in 1, tab 1, tab 1. So that's our first parameter that we're going to create. Then we'll hit the plus sign again, and we're going to make another one. And this is very similar to selecting variables in the blueprint editor. This one is going to be plain size, which is going to be a vector 2D. So we click that, and we'll call this plain size, like that. The plain size that we're going to start out with is actually going to be 1500 by 1500. So 1500 and then 1500, like that. We'll hit the plus sign and add another one here, make new. And this is going to be the spawn count. So for that is just going to be an integer, and we'll just call this spawn count. And by default we'll set it to 2. And there's that. And then we'll add one last one, and this will be velocity, which is going to be a vector again. So we'll come to common, vector, and for this one we're going to put it at 1500. Nothing there, and on the blue we're going to put it at 50, the Z actually. Those are all our default parameters and settings, and if I click back here, you'll see them right here. They'll be available to us as we work through all of our settings. So what we're going to do is just work through all the settings one at a time, and this is just kind of a time-consuming thing. So let's start at the very top, and we'll work our way down. On the first one here, on the properties, we do want local space. We do want the CPU sim and the dynamic. All we really need to do was just add the local space. So all the default settings except for local space. Now we'll come down here to emitter state, and let's see what we've got here. So the life cycle mode is self. This is all good. The loop behavior is going to be infinite. So we'll set that to infinite. The loop duration is 1. Recalculate duration each time. We'll click that. And system. And that's all we have to do on that one. Then we'll go to spawn burst instantaneous right here. And here what we want to do is add a user parameter for our spawn count. So here we'll click here and we'll search for our spawn count that we created, our parameter. It's right here, and we'll just have that there. And remember, by default that's set to 2. So we're done there. Moving right along, we're going to go to initialize particle. We have it set to random, and our lifetime is going to be from 25 tab to 35. And here we're going to select under color mode, we're going to select random range, and we're going to have this go from black to white. The color is already set to white, but you notice our alpha channel is at 0, so we'll go ahead and put that to 1 and go OK. So that is our color channel. We're going to put this to link RGBA and keep on going down. Unset, unset. Down here under mesh attributes, instead of random uniform, we're going to set that to non-uniform. And here under mesh scale, we're going to bring in our mesh scale that we set already. And this again will allow us to add variability in the editor when we drag in each of our individual systems here. So let me just go ahead and search for mesh scale right there. So that takes care of that. Random, random, and everything else is on the default. So moving on to velocity, we'll check on this one and see what's going on here. We have the velocity mode set to in cone, and we're going to set that to linear. And here we're going to add in our user velocity. So we'll click here and search for velocity. Should be in there. You know what, I just realized I didn't name this correctly. So let me come in here. I called it vector. Let me just go ahead and delete this and add it again. This should be called, I'm sorry about that, this is my mistake. This should have been called velocity. And again, this is 1500 on the X, nothing on the Y, and 50 on the Z. There we go. Let me just save that. Okay, now that we come over here, we can search for this. Search for velocity. That's one of the things, is that there's so many settings in here, it can be very easy to miss a step or miss something. So that's why I'm kind of going a little slower than usual. And obviously I don't have this memorized. So velocity speed is going to be 2, and the default is local. So next, on initial mesh orientation, we'll see here what we've got. And this is not going to be random. We're going to orient this to the vector. Here we're going to set this to all be 1. Here 2, 1 there. And here 1, here 2. And simulation, so orient to vector 1 1 0 1 1 0. That is correct. Moving on to shape location, we're about halfway done here. Our shape is actually going to be not a sphere, but you could have it be different shapes if you want, but we're going to have it be a box plane. Here, not a box, it's a plane. And here we're going to put in our default plane size. So here, right here under plane size, we're going to search for plane size. PLA, right here, plane size. That goes in there. The plane midpoint, we're going to put that to 1, tab 1. And the scale offset here on the non-uniform, we're going to put that to 2, 2, and 2. The rest is default. And now we're moving in just to these last components here. We've got our particle state. So let's click on that. And there's nothing we need to do there. We'll leave that on the default. Update mesh orientation. Here we have this all set, random range vector. Here we're going to change this to negative 0.25 on the X, and this is going to be 0, 0. Here it's going to be 0.25 and 0 and 0. Spawn only one mesh. Okay, and that's great. And then on scale color, we'll click this and click that. Honestly, just leave this kind of as it is. I don't think we actually need to adjust anything here, so we can just keep these default settings. If we want, there's actually a bar on here if we wanted to make this more linear like this. We could actually do this if we want it to be more of a linear transition. And I think that's what we want, but we'll just go ahead and keep this, the rest of this on the default. We only have 2 settings left, or 3 settings left. So let's go to curl noise force. Under noise strength, we're going to get random range float. And we're going to set this from 50 here to 250 on the maximum. The noise frequency, we're going to set to 500. Pan field noise, we can leave it baked on medium. Here, we're going to put 50 across the board. 50, 50, 50. Again, this will add some variability in there. The last one is solve forces and velocity. I don't believe there's anything on here that we need to adjust. And the last one, and probably the most important one, is our mesh renderer. So we'll click on this. We're going to go ahead and just clear this out because we don't want any of this stuff. What we want to do is we want to add a cube in here. So let's just search for a cube. And we can just grab this one. And down here on these materials, there's different materials you can play around with, and that's one of the things that you could experiment with. So we'll just go ahead and leave this on the default that it has, but you can change this later and we'll see what that ends up looking like. And there's quite a few settings on here. So everything else we can leave on the default. And again, we might come back here to adjust this. So now let's just go ahead and save those changes. And if I hit play, let's see if we see anything. Oh, you can't. It's hard to see from this perspective, but I see them going there. So it's possible that I missed a setting. It's very possible. Let's go in here and drag this into the scene and see what it looks like. Yeah, these look, they don't look quite right. So I think I've missed a setting here somewhere, which is not beyond the realm of possibility. What could the setting be that I missed? I don't know. So let's take a look and see. We're going to have to go over this again. I'm double checking. Oh, here, mesh scale, right away I see it. It is 3.0. Save. Yeah, so now that does look better. You know, honestly, let me just delete this out of the scene. Let me get back here to home. And then let me just drag it down here and see if that's any better. That's basically doing what it's supposed to be doing, but I think I might have missed a setting somewhere. So let me just take a quick break and come back and let you know. Okay, I had to take a little break there, and so what I did was I actually went through the settings and double checked them all, and they all are correct now. So everything I showed you was correct except for that one setting where on the, I believe it was on the mesh scale, we changed it to 3. So this is correct. This is our system. But the beauty of this now is that we can place as many of these as we want in the scene. So like this one, I can raise it up, put it off in the distance. But you'll see over here on the user parameters, we can actually just change the mesh scale right here on the fly. So if we want to make those longer, we can make them longer. If we want to spawn more in, we can spawn more in. And so there's all kinds of changes that we can make to these now so that we don't have to go back in and change anything in the stacks. We can also change the speed here if we want them to go faster. So we have these parameters that we can change on the fly in the game. And then I can drag in other ones as well. So I don't need this. I can have a couple of these going on at the same time. And they don't all have to be going the same direction. One can be going this way and that way. And so you can see how we can really start creating some really interesting effects off in the background. So that's all I had for today. I hope you found this helpful. Take care, have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.